registering, right? So as a matter of fact, your relationship with CAC just started, because from time to time, periodically, you'll be making necessary filings to CAC. Now, by now, I believe you already know that CAMA, Companies and Allied Matters Act, is the statute that actually regulates, the whole business activities in the Nigerian economy, and the CAC is the body that actually implements the provisions of CAMA. So now this same provision, this same statute also provides for the need to make certain post-incorporation filings, which the CAC in turn now actually implements. Now there are actually different documents you file, and one of it is the annual returns. Now I know you know what annual returns is, but then we just need to restate or reiterate some of those things. And if you don't know it, of course we'll be reiterating it, and you'll be getting what it's all about. So annual returns basically reflect the financial position of your company. That it shows how you fared over the year, financially over the financial year. So the whole thing is this: CAC wants to know what your financial situation has been for that year. So it's very necessary that you actually file this thing. So I'm sure sometimes, I don't know if you've done it, but when you go to CAC to type, probably you want to find out about the company, you type on the portal, on the search portal, and then you see inactive status. So failure to actually file this annual return is one of the things that actually contribute to that, because CAC will deem it that, oh, probably this person is out of business for the time being, and the person is still trying to gather things together. That's the presumption. So to show that you're actually active and you're in business, it's very necessary for you to make your filings annually if you're a company. So that is that for CAC. Now another is taxation. Now I'm sure you understand that there are various taxes. An average Nigerian knows that there are different education and all of those things. And these taxes actually come with laws. So there are laws that actually govern the rates and all of the things, the modus operandi, or everything that has to do with the tax, right? So and you also agree with me that some of these taxes, some are actually general in terms of application. They apply to everyone, while some actually are industry specific, right? So now we'll be looking at a few, not a lot, a few, just to buttress this point, just to buttress the need to actually file, to actually remit your tax to the body. We know the body which will actually remit these taxes to, right? The Federal Inland Revenue Service. That is the body responsible for actually receiving the remittances. So now, first of all, we're looking at the company income tax. Now, of course, you know that the company income tax is regulated, by the Companies Income Tax Act. That is the statute that actually provides for it. And it is mandatory, based on this provision, the provision of this act, that every company should actually remit 30% of the profit made in the company, 30% annually. So now this is how it goes. To make it actually very simple, if for example you own a company that actually has a turnover of more than 100 million naira, so you have to pay 30%. If your annual turnover is between 25 million naira to 100 million naira, then you'll be paying 20%. Where your annual turnover is below 25 million naira, then you are exempted. That's the word. You are exempted from actually making the remittance, for companies' income tax. So it's very important for you to actually note this. So another is the capital gains tax. Capital gains tax. So this one is remitted over, every form of disposition of, when you try to dispose chargeable assets, basically, assets like stocks, bonds, real estate properties. There are calculations around this which I won't be going into for this session. So there are calculations around it through which you now get the amount, the capital gains tax, the percentage that you'll be remitting, usually 10%. So when you calculate, you get the amount you're supposed to remit, and then you remit to the FIRS. It's very necessary. That is that for capital gains tax. Now we also have the Petroleum Profit Tax, and of course it is provided for by the Petroleum Profit Tax Act, and this act actually provides for it. And we also know that it actually applies to the petroleum sector, the upstream sector, right? So if a company that actually runs within the sector has the obligation of remitting this tax to the FIRS. Now, there's something we need to understand there. So there are different activities within the sector. We have companies that actually deal in oil production. They actually deal with oil production, and these particular ones and others, they are allowed to they have to remit their tax under the PPTA, under the Petroleum Profit Tax Act. They are to remit under this. So there are companies that actually deal with marketing of this oil and all of those things. Those ones they'll be categorized under they have to make their own remittances under Companies Income Tax Act. So their own will be under Companies Income Tax. While those that actually deal in oil production, the real oil production, they have to make their remittances under the PPTA. It's very important we note that. And of course, the Companies Income Tax, the rate is also 30% for that as well. So we also have the value added tax, and so for every supply of goods and services, it's important that the suppliers actually remit 7.5%. So it's very necessary that 7.5% is remitted to the FIRS. So this does not exclude the telecom industry. I'm sure if you're very familiar with the news, way back in February 2020, specifically February 1, 2020, there was I think the telecom industry, they actually announced the fact that they will be aligning themselves with the revised edition of the regulations providing for this. It used to be 5%, now it will be 7.5%. So it is. So basically, that's what it is you get. So that was the period when the telecom industry actually decided to align with the provision, and then of course, when you make your calls now, you see VAT, you see the VAT. It applies now to your calls. So the implication of this is that as consumers, that we spend more money, than we used to in the past when making calls, purchasing data, sending messages, and all of those things. So that is that on that. So now we're leaving the segment of taxation. We're moving down to the employee compensation scheme. So now for this one, employers are expected to remit 1% of the employee salary to the employee compensation fund. So this is a responsibility on the part of the employers. They are expected to remit 1% of the employee salary to the employee compensation fund. So the whole essence of this is to actually help the employer as well as the employee. So the thing here is this: the essence behind this is to stop something for the rainy days, basically. So imagine cases of negative occurrences happening in the course of employment. For example, some of these factories we know, one thing common today is maybe equipment falls on someone gets caught, all of those things. In situations like this, it's for the employer to now, an employer that has actually been remitting constantly, to now approach. There's this board called the Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund Board. This board is responsible for actually, ensuring that this fund is actually collected. And mind you, if this board actually notices that a particular employer is not actually remitting, they have the right to actually institute an action against that employer. So they oversee the implementation of this whole fund, the fund collection, and all of the processes attached to it. It's more like an insurance board, so to speak. So that on that is very necessary, because once, God forbid, a situation happens, a negative occurrence, maybe an injury in the factory, it's for the employer to actually reach out to this board to get necessary financial assistance based off, of course, the constant remittances they've been making to the board. So that's how that one works. Now there's another one called the Industrial Trust Fund. So this one, the ITF, basically it's more or less like the employer actually remitting 1% of the annual payroll. So it's 1% of the annual payroll, and the remittance is actually made to a body. It's usually made, of course, to the FIRS, and it is made not later than the 1st of April of every year. So the essence of this thing is to actually help, this fund is to actually help optimize the Nigerian economy by, providing trainings, trainings in management, trainings in technical skills, trainings in entrepreneurship. So that's the whole essence of this. So these funds are used to push some of these things to help optimize the Nigerian economy. So that was what the people that actually created this envisioned, right? So another is the Nigerian Immigration Service. So this one is for companies that actually hire foreign employees. So if you have foreign employees under your payroll, it's expected that you file expatriate returns, and this is done monthly, right? So it is very necessary. The report usually contain details about the foreign employee, the nationality, where the person stays in Nigeria, and all of those details. So it's very necessary that this is filed. And of course, this comes with consequences if you fail to file. Like every other one we've talked about, there are consequences attached to it, which we'll be looking at, a little more later towards the end. So, but for this one, I can't help but mention it is 3 million naira, or its equivalent in dollars. So where you fail to file and they find out, you pay the fine. And another one is finally, I think, is SCUMO, Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering. So we already spoke about this in the past, and if you don't know about it, you might want to check out the previous presentation, which I did myself. And basically, DNFIs are expected to register with SCUMO. What are DNFIs? What is SCUMO? Go ahead and check that one we did in, I think some weeks ago. Go ahead and check it out, and then you'll be able to find out in detail. I really explained, I did a lot of explanation on how everything works, because it's necessary you know some of these things, right? So now, just to wrap everything up, now this filings is mandatory, like we said, mandatory post-incorporation filings. And when something is mandatory, when the law provides for something as mandatory, of course, they also provide for fines and penalties where you fail to align with this. So at the end of the day, to be very realistic, at the end of the day, what you end up paying as penalties and fines would be a multiple of what you should have paid earlier on, right? So it is very necessary that you adhere to these filings. So one of the things that happens is that these penalties are usually gross. They're usually huge. Like I just mentioned the one for the Immigration Service. Under the Immigration Act that provides for the fine and all of that. So these fines can disrupt the business activities. It can disrupt cash flow. So instead of actually going through all of those things, make the necessary remittances. And yes, another thing is that it actually taints your brand identity. Imagine when you are being dragged over issues like this, and potential customers are seeing this and like, oh, this brand, no. It's a no-no for me, so it taints the brand identity of your brand. So it's very necessary that you actually, like I'm going to restate it again and again and again, go ahead, make your necessary filing, pay your tax, do all of those necessary things. They're very important. And another thing is, like, it may also lead to revocation of your license. Remember in the past, I think a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks ago, when we looked at obtaining licenses and all of those things. So depending on the industry you operate, there are licenses that are given to you, right? So most of the time, when you are caught up in all of these compliance issues, you may actually have those certificates given to you, all of those things actually withdrawn. Yes, it happens in real life. So conclusively, I would advise that go ahead and make your remittances when needed, file your annual returns, do all of those things. Project your brand positively to the world, and so that investors that want to invest will be able to see you and then invest. Customers that have to patronize you also, that wants to patronize you, would actually be confident enough to to patronize you and all of that. So I wish you the best in your business endeavors. Have a nice day. Thank you very much for listening.